Hello, this is Anna, co-founder of the Final Girls Collective and your podcast host. If you're new to the podcast, every season on this show we explore the intersections of horror film and feminism, looking at a particular trope in depth. And in this current season, we are talking about the most elegant and the horniest of movie monsters, the vampire. In each episode, I'm joined by a special guest to dive deep into a vampire movie or two. We discuss the films in detail, try to contextualize them, and think about what works and what doesn't. In today's episode, and I've been waiting for this one for a while, we've got a jumbo, epic deep dive into the entire Blade trilogy. We go from the 1998 original film based on the Marvel comic book character via Guillermo del Toro's 2002 sequel to finish off with a passionate reclamation of the much maligned third entry, Blade Trinity. The entire franchise stars the incredible Wesley Snipes as the titular character, a damn fear, a half vampire, half human dedicated to killing as many vampires as possible. That's as much as I'll give away in terms of plot, because if you have not seen Blade, drop everything you're doing right now and watch it immediately. It is the most fun way to spend any evening or morning, day, whatever. Just watch them. I'm joined in this episode by the brilliant writer, podcaster, producer, and Blade mega fan, Jordan Crucchiola. We've been waiting for Blade O'Clock for months now, and it's finally happened. I hope you have. This entire vampire season is made possible with the support of our friends at Our Video, who bring the very best in cult horror and genre films to amazing deluxe home entertainment editions with newly commissioned artwork and specially curated extras. They've got a massive collection of over 500 physical releases, and we are picking out a film from that collection to go with each episode. And this week, our pick is another 90s horror classic, a terrifying, truly terrifying take on urban legends and gentrification. Based on a Clive Barker story, our pick this week is Candyman. Truly one of the greatest horror films of the 1990s, newly restored and available on Blu-ray from Arrow Video. Also to be said, we have extra episodes landing on our Patreon, so if you're able to and you would like to support us over there, head over to patreon.com/thefinalgirls. We've got some more goodies over there and a lot more coming over and a lot more coming soon. With that said, if you're new to the podcast, please know that we discuss the films in detail pretty much from the very beginning. So if you're averse to any discussion of a film before you watch it, consider this your spoiler warning. And if you really don't mind and you need, for some reason, convincing to go watch Blade, please enjoy our in-depth discussion of the entire Blade trilogy. Jordan, it's such a pleasure to have you back.
I am so happy to be back, as you well know, because I would like for everybody listening out there to know that we are already entering our third hour of conversation at this point. So we are engaged. We are ready to go. The vibe is set. Yes.
The vibe is set for Blade O'Clock to
Blade
finally
O'Clock!
happen.
Yes. That is how listener, we got the final scheduling piece of this underway. Anna DM'd me last week and was like, it's Blade O'Clock. Are you ready to record next week? I was like, well, that's the best hour of any day, anytime. So yeah, sounds super.
I am not kidding. I think I've probably messaged you about this. I might have just done that in my head, but I have been waiting. I've been saving the Blade films. I see them pop up because in the UK, 2 of them are on Amazon Prime. One of them is on Netflix. They pop up constantly because all I'm doing right now is watching vampire movies.
Oh, so the algorithm, and it's come out, the first movie got its 4K, re-release with a steelbook. Here in the States, everywhere, I don't know how regional DVDs work, but so I feel like I've been seeing a lot of renewed Blade talk on my timeline over here as well, because I got that for Christmas also. And then if the algorithm is hitting you, I'm thrilled to see Blade coming back into the consciousness as it so rightfully deserves to.
Me too. And I just like to point out that I've been like saving watching it because every time, pretty much since before Christmas, I was like, oh, is it Blade o'clock already? Can I watch the Blade movies? Already?
Yeah.
It's like, no, you have to save it for the podcast, be fresh for the conversation with Jordan. And it's finally fucking Blade o'clock.
So were these your first watches or were these rewatches for you?
Oh, no, rewatches.
Okay.
No.
Yeah.
I have seen the Blade films.
You watch all the things.
I've seen them multiple times.
Got it.
One of them in cinemas, Blade Trinity.
Yep, that's the one I saw in theaters. That's the one I saw in theaters.
But I have to admit, I haven't revisited them in about maybe 5 years, something like that, maybe a bit longer. But before we properly dig into all the Blade films, and we're gonna try to talk about each film individually, but they will weave one into another. Jordan, what is your relationship in general with vampire films? Is it a subgenre of horror that you enjoy?
I do. I don't. It's not one that I feel like I need to be a completist about. Like I take them as they are. I enjoy them. I certainly respect the fact that, you know, as far as horror goes, Dracula is really our horror monster. And there is a great sentence. There's a great explanation of Dracula. To me, it's a great explanation of Dracula in Blade Trinity, where Ryan Reynolds is trying to give Blade the breakdown of like, here's what we know about Dracula so far. We've got a piece of his armor. We've been able to synthesize what his body looked like. You know, he's the original. He, you know, if you believe the myths, he was born in ancient Sumeria. He's given the whole rundown. And there's a line I've never forgotten that I love so much, where he says, I don't even know if this is fucking true of sharks, but he says, like the great white shark, this guy has never had to evolve because he's a perfect specimen. He's a perfect creation. And that is Dracula. That is the vampire sort of, you know, one wants to see innovation around the way a vampire story is told, certainly in cinema, but what a vampire is if that is true scientifically, haven't fact checked it, a great white shark. It has never had to evolve, really. And you gotta respect that. Like what Deacon Frost is in Blade 1, what is that it's Dominic, is that Dominic Purcell?
Dominic Purcell. Yeah, the
Purcell,
prison break dude.
Yep, Dominic Purcell as Dracula in Blade Trinity. There's obviously the second one has innovation in creature because it's a Guillermo del Toro movie, but you look at those two primary antagonists in Blade 1 and 3, that's Bela Lugosi. That draws from the tradition of Dracula as we first saw him realized on screen in 1931 in the classic horror, in like the beginning, the classic horror age at the Hollywood studios, and it persists. That is still the image through Lestat and through Interview with the Vampire in the 90s. That is the image through, like, ever since Nosferatu, we kind of left that haggard old bastard behind. Like, what you saw in True Blood, like, that is the vampire. That is how it populates our in lore and in our imaginations, and that is impressive.
I know. I mean, that's a whirlwind tour of how Dracula and the vampire has evolved, but I find it really interesting that you talk about Blade 1 for the purposes of clarity and Blade Trinity. Yes. So let's start with the beginning. Let's start with Blade from 1999.
You better wake up. The world you live in is just a sugar-coated topping. There is another world beneath it. The real world.
For thousands of years, they have existed among us.
You keep your eyes open. They're everywhere. Chances are you've seen them yourself and didn't know it.
A secret nation.
Our livelihood depends on our ability to blend in.
With a lust for power.
We should be ruling the humans. These people are our food.
They've got their claws into everything. Politics, finance, real estate.
There's a war going on out there. He makes the weapons. I use them.
Now, one will lead them to conquer mankind.
Tonight, the age of man comes to an end.
We're gonna be gods.
And one will try to stop him dead.
and worse things out tonight than vampires.
Like what?
Like me.
Half human,
Blade's mother was attacked by a vampire while she was pregnant.
half immortal.
You got the best of both worlds. All our strengths, none of our weaknesses.
He is their greatest fear and our only hope.
It's open season on all vampires.
Wesley Snipes, Stephen Dorff.
You're one of them, aren't you?
No, I'm something else.
Blade.
So, what's your relationship with the film itself? When did you first see it, and do you revisit it often?
We love Blade in the Crucchiola household. I've talked about this more and more lately. I was raised on like action movies. The movies that my mom and dad most often agreed on, like at the video store, we'd go pick something out, were Van Damme movies, Dolph Lundgren movies, Steven Seagal movies. So like varying degrees of quality of action cinema. Like you have great material in there, like Universal Soldier and Bloodsport. The original Under Siege, like those are solid action hits of the 90s. Then like you have the down market stuff, which I think there's one called like Desert Heat that Jean-Claude Van Damme did. Like, so up and down the spectrum of quality, we just liked fight movies. And then we loved Wesley Snipes. As I've gotten older even, I have revisited my love of Wesley Snipes, and it has intensified so much more. Wesley Snipes is the king of the 90s to me. I love that man. His range
100%.
comedically, physically as an action star, as a dramatic presence, which is so underappreciated about him. The range that this man has, and the incredible amount of entertainment in a span of 10 years that he packed into films from the late 80s through the 90s. I was part of the Screen Drafts team that did the Wesley Snipes draft on that podcast, and it was so much fun to just shout about what an underrated range this guy has. And we love a superhero movie in my house too. Like the X-Men films that came out, like that first X-Men film that came out, what was that? Was that like 98 or 9? Or was that early 2000s?
It was the year 2000.
Year 2000. We love that shit in my house. Like, give us this red meat action fantasy, yes. And Blade, fuck. This movie is so good. This movie is a great vampire movie. This movie is a great action movie. This movie is a great dry comedy at points. This movie is a great sci-fi fantasy movie. This is, I think, one of the great American genre films ever made, for all of the things that it is and does so well at once, with the perfect cast. Like, Stephen Dorff as Deacon Frost is a fucking all-timer villain. His villain chemistry with Blade the hero, it's so cool. Like, here in the States, Blade came out in 1998. It just beat The Matrix. And this movie, to me, is in an amazing combination of the kinds of cool that I feel radiating off of both The Matrix, that I think really defined that, like, 90s sort of cyberpunk infused, like, dystopia, ultra cool, like, modern technology infused before technology was ubiquitous, so it was like exotic and weird.
It was a type of cool that has since a lot of movies, especially more like genre movies, have attempted to imitate, and very, very few have succeeded in making it breathe cool. What I like to call the new metal trash cinema.
Yeah.
Queen
new
of the
metal
Damned.
Hard.
Like, what new metal was for music, new metal cinema was for genre cinema. Like, Queen of the Damned tries to be Blade, but, like, kind of emo. And fails at that.
No, I think a perfect complement to this, which is, like, when I say the blend, I think it's of what we saw afterwards in The Matrix and what we see now in John Wick. I think the way that Blade, especially Blade 1, establishes immediately this parallel reality to the one we live in that is rich and realized and expansive. Both Blade and John Wick, you have this like techno-gothic sensibility, and you feel like every time you enter a new room, there are 50 doors going off of it. There's a hallway in each one that leads to another fully realized and developed room. Like the sort of Baroque, modern mythology, the way that it is realized and brought to life. I feel like that same kind of immediate establishment of this subterranean world that is as densely populated and art directed as our own sort of up in the daylight world. You know, these underworlds that exist with the Wick and the Blade universes. The way that first movie just drops you in and you immediately believe it's real from that first legendary opening sequence at the Blood Rave. You're all in. You're like, holy shit, vampires are real. They're coming out at night, and they have a whole like upside down world basically that mirrors our own, that they are living in every day. Holy shit, this is real. This is happening. And Blade makes you feel that.
They're not just real, but there are so many of them, and they've been around for so long that they've got systems established for themselves, not just to feed themselves and not be outed, but also to have fun. They've adapted the modern world to suit their needs. Hence, Blood Rave. And I genuinely, that first scene...
Oh, it's one of the best openings ever in cinema history. It's one 100%. Of the best, not in action... Not in whatever you want to subclassify, in ever. And we cannot divorce that from the pure charisma of Tracy Lords as a vampire trapping a man and taking him to his doom at the Blood Rave. I mean, Tracy Lords in that. The only problem I have, honestly, with First Blade is that Tracy Lords doesn't exist throughout the entire she does not exist throughout the entire movie as like the lesbian counterpart to Mercury, to Arlie Jover's character, because them as like a great throuple, Mercury, Tracy Lords' character, and Deacon Frost would have been so hot the entire time.
She should have come back like Whistler does for the next films. True. So, but that scene also is probably one of the best introductions of a lead character. Again, in cinema history.
Wow. That's like a fucking drag queen entrance when Blade comes into the Blood Rave. That is an epic event.
There's so much. So let's talk about both Blade as a character and Mr. Wesley Snipes, who brings the legacy of his career and his star persona at that time, which is not to be underestimated, but also all of the different facets of his abilities that you were just mentioning before. Let's talk about his Blade.
Wesley Snipes is doing so much the performance is so extra. Like, and it's so magical because it's like a camp level of commitment to this Batman voice that he's doing, this very like Nolan-esque Batman voice, and like the incredible like 90s leather rave outfits, and the sternness that is like humorless to the point of one-dimensional, and yet all of it is natural, it is effortless, it is cool, it is evocative. Like, you feel it's big dick energy. Like, you feel the magnetic power of this man raiding through the screen. You're like, holy shit, it's the Daywalker. Like, you believe, much like you immediately believe this subterranean universe of vampirism is eternal and real as soon as you are introduced to this world in Blade. You immediately are like, oh, so Wesley Snipes has been a Daywalker this whole time, acting as a sidekick. Because what he really is a human hybrid vampire slayer that is unfuckwithable. Like, he even, like, you watch this now, and his, like, anybody with less confidence and certainty in this role the clothes would look silly now. Like, it would feel dated now. Like, you watch it and it's so gloriously, late 90s in the way that you see, like, the kind of open, unbuttoned shirt that Stephen Dorff is wearing, and the, like, white on white on white outfit that we meet Mercury in, which she has, like, frosted lipstick on, and her hair is platinum white. Like, there's so much that is so gorgeously 90s about this, but in a way that it feels like a period piece. It doesn't feel like, oh, this is a time gone by, but, like, that was so cute. Looking at the aesthetic of Blade now, and it even happens again in Trinity too, like so many years removed from the original, where you look at those clothes and you're like, I would make a gag about this, like, on Twitter while I live watch if Wesley Snipes didn't make it look so goddamn cool. Like, I don't even feel the need to be like, LOL guys, 1998 when I look at this, because I'm like, nope. Drop that Blade in any era, and that's what Wesley Snipes' Blade is gonna wear. It doesn't matter if it's 2021. It doesn't matter if it is 1998. This is what Blade looks like, because this is how Wesley Snipes, as far as I'm concerned, invented Blade. This is not a Marvel creation. Wesley Snipes invented Blade, and that is just how completely. I think a thing that I feel like the broader conversation around Snipes. Like, there's such a specific thing that I would like to talk about him with him, which is his fight charisma. Like, there's a reason, like, Jason Statham is pure, like, energy and, like, sex appeal. I love the stave. One of the key reasons he is as successful as he is because he has that, and because his fight chemistry on screen is so good. He is such a good film fighter. And I watch Wesley Snipes movies throughout the 90s, and the physical energy and awareness of his body, the particular flair, like physical idiosyncrasies that come with a Wesley Snipes fight in anything from Passenger 57 to Drop Zone to like, which I think reaches its crescendo in this, to a Demolition Man. There is a kind of verve in the way that he fights, and I know I could get crucified by, like, action people for saying this, but, like, in the way that you watch Bruce Lee, he's not Bruce Lee, but in the way that you watch Bruce Lee fight, and not only is he, like, he is a legendary martial artist, he's an incredible athlete, tactician, Bruce Lee was a screen fighter, too. Like, he was a legitimately incredible fighter, martial artist, who on screen was an incredible, gorgeous, balletic screen fighter. And the charisma and the pop that came off of him in fight scenes is so much of what made you want to keep watching him. Not just because the feats of physical accomplishment were amazing, but you just watching, you're like, oh my god, look at the swagger coming off of this man. And the swagger that comes off of Wesley Snipes as a screen combat presence, and then you put it in the hardened shell of somebody so stylized as Blade, the particular way, like, his body pops and jerks when he's in a combat scene, that is unique to Snipes. You have the fight choreography, and then you have the unique to Snipes aspect of how he just looks when he's kicking someone's ass in a movie. And it's undeniable. It's undeniable kind of power.
I think there's also another element to his on-screen charisma, and his on-screen the embodiment of Blade is his stillness.
Yes.
And I think the way that he remains still in a mass, especially in that first opening scene, but it happens continuously throughout the film, and especially in the subsequent films, when there's a lot of stuff happening around him, a lot of moving bodies, whether they're in a fight mode or whether they're in a rave or whatever it is. He has this unique ability to be completely still and still command not just your attention but also fear. And even I genuinely do not understand how he does this, to be funny without moving a single muscle or doing anything. Like, it, how much ability do you have in just the way you can manipulate your voice to not do a single other thing and be able to say the words, some motherfuckers are always trying to ice skate uphill, and have it not seem hokey or hackneyed. Like, that line is badass as shit.
Some motherfuckers are always trying to ice skate uphill.
And he is doing nothing when he delivers it. It is incredible.
I've never seen anything like this in any action film. ever. I might have not seen enough, but there was a particular scene in 2, and I know that I was going to try to contain these. I'm the one jumping ahead, but there's
I'm
a particular
being very disciplined. I'm like, don't start talking about Blade Trinity.
But on the subject of his humor and his ability to infuse stillness with humor, there's a particular scene in 2 when he is having his little like, oh god, what's the word? Where he's having his little like playful bands with Reinhard, with Ron Perlman's character.
Ron Perlman,
he doesn't do anything, and then you're laughing. And it's just a smirk. He just needs to smirk ever so lightly, and it is the funniest moment in the entire film.
Well, and he has his vocal range is quite big, and so when you when Wesley Snipes gets animated and gets high pitched, like he's very like entertaining to watch. But he's so low down the entire time that there are these occasional moments where the voice goes up a bit and becomes more human again, and it just accents. It serves as accent pieces when he does that. I forget whether it's 1 or 3, where there's this one moment where he like looks askance the way he does, because Blade is looking straight ahead so often. It's noteworthy when he turns his head from one side to the other. So when he turns his head to look at something, you know he's really clocking it. And I forget which one is 1 or 3, where he just looks at something and he just goes, "Oh, it's you." And his voice kind of peaks up a little bit. And it's so funny because he hasn't done that with his voice the entire time. And it's just like, it really, like you said with the stillness, it's why I love this franchise so much, even the most maligned 3, because he's the constant. You have everything is organized around Blade, and as long as I have Wesley Snipes being Blade, him reacting to whatever is going on around him is what I am there for. That is what I care about. You can have the craziest monsters Guillermo del Toro can design. I am still more interested in how Wesley Snipes is going to choose to respond to something as Blade than I am any of the madness around him. And I think that is, in the midst of a comic book vampire franchise, the way that speaks to his power on screen, whether he is in an electric fight scene, or he is standing still amidst chaos, or he's delivering a dry one-liner, or he is just like growling wordlessly, exposing his vampire fangs. It's so compelling. He is throughout never less compelling in any installment of that series.
So let's talk a little bit about how he sits in relation to this vampire world. Like you mentioned, from the very first scene, we're establishing this upside down world that coexists with the human reality. And very quickly, we're given a shit ton of information about how vampires operate, and how long they've operated on, and what their particular politics are. So how do you think kind of Blade builds a whole vampire ecosystem within just the first film?
I mean, even as the second movie gets so expansive, I don't have an issue with that. I like going into these more, sort of ornate settings, but I like so much, and I think, like you were saying, so many sort of imitators come off of something like Blade. John Wick is such a rare example of doing that so completely. It still feels, what those movies have managed to do is, no matter how much bigger in each installment of John Wick the world gets bigger and bigger and bigger, it all still feels so intimate all the time. You always still feel like you're in this closed circuit place, that everything is under control and managed, which gives the sort of implicit notion in your head that the people who made these things have such a clarity of purpose and a clarity of vision in what they're doing that it never feels messy. And I think what the first one does so well is it's so tight and it's so efficient. And I love, like, from the way it takes ordinary, I think a strength of that first one is the way that it takes ordinary places and makes them just wrong enough to feel amiss, or just wrong enough to feel like they're not a part of our human experience. Like when you go to you're essentially in like the basement of like a meat locker at the blood rave. Well, then it becomes a fucking blood rave. And then you see the council of like the elder vampires. Another brilliant thing this movie did is it put Udo Kier in it. And anytime you put Udo Kier in a movie, you're making a statement of how weird you want it to be. And that's a statement that I will always get down with. I watched one movie at the Sundance Film Festival because I could only afford to buy one ticket. And I was like, I want to watch something weird. Oh, this has Udo Kier in it. This is the movie that I'm going to watch. Because like I knew it would be sufficiently strange as long as he was in it. So like you have this council of vampires that's just sitting in a dark concrete room that you're just like, it feels immediately like a seat of power. There's nothing interesting about this room other than the people sitting at the table. And the way I really like how anytime you get like an urban, like wide shot in a Blade movie, all the buildings look like they're made of liquid. Like the glass is so shiny and the metal is so polished. Like it does these pans around buildings and it looks like everything is made of water. It's so glistening and slick. And that is sort of, to me, a little microcosm of how this movie manages to make everything glistening and slick, even when it's not. There's a scene where Deacon is sitting in a computer center, like he's in the like archives of like their vampire texts, and he's decoding the old Aramaic of the scripts to learn how to bring back the blood god, all this, that, and the other. I don't know how it looks so cool. He's sitting in a white goddamn box. He's sitting in a white box with an old ass computer, and it's like, ooh, the future. There's nothing overdone about that room. When you meet Pearl, this movie does such a good job of introducing its characters. When you meet Tracy Lord's character, when you meet Blade, when you meet Mercury, when you meet Frost, when you meet Quinn, fucking Donald Logue as Quinn, each entrance kind of sears the character in your mind, and you're ready to see more of them throughout the movie. When you meet in Boucher Wright, like, it does such a good job of immediately making you interested in how much more there is to know about each one of these people. And when you meet Pearl, like, you've done so much already. You've established this vampire world that he's gone on the creepy walk through that nightclub where there are a bunch of, like, it practically looks like teenagers singing in schoolgirl suits to a bunch of, like, businessmen smoking in blue light, and it's very upsetting. Well, they go into the bowels of this facility, and there is Pearl, the gargantuan, sedentary vampire, who is sort of, it seems like a piece of a very reliable person of institutional knowledge for Frost to tap into, because he's trying to decode these old scriptures. And Pearl is the closest thing to sort of the supernatural, like, outside of the vampire itself, the closest thing to, like, what we would see in Blade 2 with an elaboration on, like, oh, the creatures are evolving and they're becoming this, like, whole other very unhuman looking thing. Like, you see Pearl and it's like, fuck, are we gonna meet dragons too? Like, how is Pearl real? The sound of Pearl's voice, the size of Pearl's body, the grotesqueness of, like, the bodily functions that you're seeing in there. And so it just does a great job of creating this sense of normalcy and then injecting enough things that are ever more extraordinary to make you be like, oh fuck, there's more. There's more to find out. So, like, when the nurse at the hospital gets attacked, and we learn later in the movie that he doesn't die, and he's been thrown in a pit where he's turned into this, like, sort of an accident, it seems like, that happens every so often when you turn a person. They don't become fully vampire, but they are no longer human and they are not dead, so they basically become these sort of parasites that they just, like, feed rats to, and become these, like, you know, we throw people down in this pit and they eat anything, so this creature's gonna eat you. We see him later on, and he becomes another anomaly in this world that has started to feel so normal to us. So it keeps reminding you that there's more to know, that there's an infinite amount of knowledge here, that, like, well, we just have to get further into the world to figure it all out. And you feel that way clear up until the end of the movie.
What's really interesting about what you're saying is that it shows both the glossy, sexy side of that vampires that we're really used to seeing.
Yeah.
Because we get, like, the corporate pure blood vampires, as they refer to themselves, versus kind of more the early .com boom, like, startup CEOs, kind of embodied by Deacon Frost.
The disruptors.
Yeah, the disruptors. Yeah. Like, with the big fringe and the open white shirt and the slacks and everything and the attitude.
The tacky
and also
new money.
Yeah, and Deacon Frost is smoking, by the way. I love the idea that vampires are smoking in this movie.
Yeah.
But it's like, the disruptors, the old money, and then there's so many other ways of being a vampire that are quite grotesque, that are not appealing. This is not something somebody chooses to be. So the narrative that we're usually fed in like these movies is it's sort of glamorous, a bit sad, a bit tragic, but it looks good. You will look great forever. You'll be young forever. And here there's all these other options, because you see the glamorous kind of turning of hot young vampires like Deacon Frost and his cronies. Yeah. But then you also see the really awful, grotesque process of healing after they get maimed. You hear all the sort of quote unquote like the possibilities of how they can evolve that they can't control. Not everybody will turn in the same way. So it's like, this is a world that you can see is expanding, evolving, aka like they are they're also in constant evolution the same way as humans are. Yeah. It kind of makes it more not understandable. It makes it more of a constant fleshy villain for Blade to rail against, because and to also internally constantly keep himself in check to not fully go over to the vampire side. Yeah.
No, I think that's a great point.
So what do you think then about I kind of really want to talk about Deacon Frost.
Oh, Deacon Frost!
He is just, I really miss actors like Steven Dorff who just completely go balls out with the role.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, this is a bad dude. This is a villain. You just need to completely embody the villain aside. There is no depth. There is no questioning.
No.
He is a horrendous villain in the best possible way.
And he happens to just physically, I think few actors tasked with playing a vampire ever have done a better job working their mouth around their teeth. The way, because it affects the way your mouth moves, it affects the way you speak, and the way Steven Dorff works around his fang inserts, it actually feels like a part of his just physical choreography. And the way he moves his mouth and sneers, I think is just so incredibly effective. Because there's kind of like, there ends up being a bit of an awkwardness if you have long fangs with the way the bottom lip and the jaw interact with them in a way that it's hard to make that look graceful. So the mouth just has to stay open, sort of. So you just have a bunch of people walking around mouth breathing, and you have to find a way to make that look cool and sexy. And Deacon Frost manages to make this kind of open mouth posture and constant ominousness seem entirely fluid to the character. And that there's that perfect interaction where they're in the park. Deacon has slathered himself with sunscreen, and he's gonna go meet Blade for a confrontation. And it's one of the few, like, real daylight. It's of course, like, the only daylight interaction we're going to get between these two characters. And so you see him, like, menacing at Blade, and he's threatening a child. And that's how he sort of, like, there are multiple occasions in this movie that someone, like, takes a kid hostage and, like, gets Blade to comply. So you see Blade across the park, and Deacon is just doing his best to summon being an absolute dickhead to Blade and telling him that the end is near and this is futile, and just being such an asshole. And Blade, in his just perfect nonchalance, as the sun, like he's out in the sun longer, just says, "Your mascara's running," because his sunscreen starts dripping down his face. And no matter what kind of swinging dick Deacon Frost thinks he is, he's still only got about a minute in the sunshine before he's got to go hightail it. So Blade just the power move that is, and watching just like the fury register on Deacon's face. This, like, he came out of nowhere with this role. Like, Steven Dorff had this role. It's like, shit, man. Why didn't we get decades more of this? Like, who missed the mark in getting Steven Dorff to go all out like just like a supreme villain, extraordinary in this way? I mourn what we have not gotten from Steven Dorff in, like, more sci-fi fantasy. Where was he in the Underworld franchise for, like, 7 installments? Just, like, dripping with, like, being sinister.
Where was he in True Blood? Everybody
Where?
got cast in True Blood.
You know who I don't need? Vampire Bill, ever. I do need... I hate Vampire Bill. I do need... Where was his big bad? Like, that would have been so good to have Steven Dorff come back and just be hissing things, like, basically topping Eric Northman, making Bill look like a bigger joke than he already was. Like, yes.
I want Vampire Steven Dorff to come back and have a big dick energy off with Vampire Christopher Maloney, because that was another surprising turn of True Blood.
Good lord. And Sarah Newland would go from like feeder captive in a basement at the end of that show to just being Steven Dorff's girlfriend. Like Sarah Newland and Steven Dorff as a vampire, that would have been a wonderful pairing.
But True Blood aside, there is something about Blade that really kind of I really wanted to touch with you upon, and it's his core human relationships, because the tension at the center of Blade is always this dynamic of him being half in the human world, half in the vampire world, and being reviled, not really belonging in either one of them, and hence having a bit more power over both of those worlds. But what about his core relationships? And in this film, it's obviously Whistler, but it's also his mother, and it's also Dr. Karen Jensen.
Dr. Karen. No, it's where two it's a thing about two that I always had a hard time getting on board with, because what they try and do in two is give him more of an outright romantic interest. Like they like work a love story in. And it's not that Wesley can't do it. It's just that having Blade be vulnerable in such the way that they have him do, I think it actually takes away from the character, because Blade isn't without vulnerability to start. I don't think we need to make Blade more likely to cry on screen to understand that he's a caring, feeling human being. And they do that so well in this, where the relationship between him and Whistler, I'm so glad they keep reviving Whistler throughout these. I mean, Jesus, they just, how many times and in how many ways does Chris Christopherson die in this franchise? And like the most frail character in the entire franchise, just like physically he's old, he's sick, he keeps coming back to life. But like the tenderness of like that hard-won paternal, like, father-son kind of care between Chris Christopherson and Wesley Snipes is so good. And when to hear, you hear in that gravelly Chris, I'm sorry I got old on you, Blade. Like, it stirs me. And then when he saves Dr. Karen, the relationship that grows between him and Boucher Wright throughout this movie is so satisfying. And she gets to be, like, it's unquestionably Blade's movie. She gets to be such a badass. Like, Dr. Karen Jensen is fucking cool. And that she, like, starts by, like, they're, trying to rescue her. She's been bit. She's like, well, fuck, I'm gotta, it's early stage infection. Let me see if I can work up, like, a serum to try and stop this from taking me over. She is immediately established in her intelligence, in her cunning, in her bravery. She's scared. There's a lot of crazy shit going on. One of my favorite moments in the first Blade is when he's rescuing her and she gets her shoulder dislocated and he has to pop it back in. And she has that like amazing, like visceral scream moment. But like her confrontational relationship with him throughout that does evolve. Like one of my few regrets of this franchise is that she doesn't actually carry through to all of them and become like his Whistler. Because they kind of set it up like she's going to become his Whistler. And I would have loved to have seen that carry forward because of the, like, there's a tension between them and he cares for her. It doesn't, like, it could be sexual or it could just be, like, a collegial, like, professional respect. I like the way that there was, the ways in which Blade has intimacy with people in this franchise. As this is a tangential thing, but as an ace identifying person, as somebody on the asexual spectrum, I always appreciate where relationships are fostered on screen in ways that deviate from just seeing who is having sex with who and who isn't, and dividing like intimacy, particularly between like characters that could have sexual chemistry with one another, and actually letting that be realized in different and equally interesting ways. And I think these movies do such a good job. I think this movie in particular does such a good job of showing the ways that Blade does need connection and comfort in his life with the way he responds to his mother. Having Sanaa Lathan play his mother, who is, she looks the same age now as she did then, but like watching that dynamic be like, that's a perfect sort of vampire movie opportunity that they take advantage of so well in Blade 1. Is like, is it sexy? Should it be sexy? Is this inappropriate? Is this incest? What are the rules here? These are vampires. Like, there is this uncomfortable, and in a way that I think Interview with the Vampire did really well, playing with like sexual attraction and romantic attraction and intimacy and friendship. This movie does a really good job when it brings back Blade's mom to be like, she has no maternal connection to him anymore. She is vampire. She hasn't seen him his entire life. So there's this tenderness. Oh, Eric. She calls him Eric. There's this tenderness between them. And she uses that to manipulate him. But then because she is not his mother anymore and she's something else, it becomes seduction. So by the time Blade is in that tomb where he's being bloodlet to have his juices summon the blood god to imbue Deacon Frost with like world dominating power, she is like up to him touching his face and it's like, oh, this is a straight up horny moment. But she's definitely his mom. But like that definitely doesn't matter. And just the way in which it suspends human rules in that moment because these are not human beings is another great just implicit way that it establishes you're not dealing with Homo sapiens right now. You're dealing with something else and the rules are different.
But I think it's also a very emotionally crafty and manipulative way of weaponizing that gray area that exists with supernatural beings that are still presenting as human. So they still look hot. They still are present. And, you know, vampires are the horniest of movie monsters.
Oh,
really,
yeah.
Which is what I've been saying at the beginning of every single episode of the series. But it's the ultimate manipulative trick by Deacon of fucking with Blade's mind. The vampire that he weaponizes against him is not any one of his henchmen or henchwomen. It's his mother, who he has literally been keeping in some sort of like minimalistic cocoon, ready to deploy her whenever he needed to weaken Blade, because he could not weaken him physically. He could only reach to the side of him that he could not control, which is
and it's
the
entirely
human
possible
side.
that he's been having sex with Blade's mom for decades. So like,
I think it's pretty much like pretty explicitly implied.
Like it's also just like, hey, I not only like turned your mom and took her away from you ever, I've also been fucking your mom for decades, and now I'm gonna weaponize her against you in this weird psychosexual maternal way. It's so layered and crazy, and so like, again, coolly handled. This is what we're explaining. It's like when we were talking about All Cheerleaders Die. The way it just, I kept explaining things that were happening in the movie. I was like, Jesus, a lot happens in this movie. This is crazier than I thought. When you talk through things like this, of what's going on screen and Blade, you're like, shit, this is wild. But when you're watching it, it is all just like at kind of a middle register. And it's like, what? This is just life. This is just how things go. Of course it's crazy. There are vampires.
But also that's the level of weirdness that you need to get to make both a character as cool as Blade and a performer as like downright powerful and cool as Wesley Snipes is in that role to feel visibly physically uncomfortable on screen.
There's always like a moment of vulnerability and an extraordinary vulnerability in a Blade movie where he just loses his defense mechanisms, or he sheds the facade for just long enough to like do something that like, oh my gosh, he's being so sweet and tender. And when you see him bound and imprisoned like that, you see him truly weakened for the only time that he's going to be in this movie. And he's physically weakened because he's being drained, but the thing that's taking the biggest toll on him in that moment is being confronted with his mother and having this grave loss of his exploited. And this love he feels is what tethers him to his human experience. It's what prevents him from fully, as he is always told, the thirst always wins. It's what prevents him from succumbing to the thirst and continuing to take the serum and fight back that half of his being. it is also amazing. There's also those moments where Blade at his most powerful is when he does succumb. Blade at his most powerful is when he gives in to the monstrosity and lets that power him through, like a pivotal scene, because when he's being bled out, he gets rescued by Karen, and she's like, "You're depleted, you have to feed on me." And he knows that that's a real slippery slope, because it's pretty hard to stop, I would imagine, drinking blood once you start. And so, but he does. He, like, takes her by the neck, and he's drinking her blood, and she is just like, you see the life leaving her body, and you see him becoming ravenous. And then he does that, like, you know, the stretch and, like, build toward the camera and scream. And he, you know, Frost! And he's off on a mission. He could have killed all those people. He could have killed all those vampires if he was Daywalker Blade. But when he is powered by the rage and the thirst, he is actually at his most impressive. And I think that is an amazing in a hero character, in a black hero character too. And the reclamation of monstrosity, the reclamation of otherness as something that is a point of power, as something that is what makes you extraordinary, is something that is what moves you above and beyond your obstacles and the competitors around you. And to see in a hero the monstrous being turned into an asset that he then, it's not a matter of, because he doesn't like the vampire half of himself, but he also relishes that he is probably the most powerful being in the entire world. And
well, there's a choice. He does have to make the choice ultimately to either be cured completely and give up his vampire side, or choose to remain in the in-between, but still be able to be on this righteous path of killing vampires.
And that he ultimately is in control. He is ultimately in control. Like, even when he relinquishes himself to the thirst and he does drink from Karen, at the end of the movie, he's not some, like, rabid beast wandering around the movie looking for his next fix. He's like, all right, give me the serum. We're putting that back in the box. It's there when I need it, but I'm Blade and I'm fucking in charge of who I am. And I am in control of my power.
And then before we move on to Blade 2, wanted to talk about, we kind of mentioned the fact that it is incredibly stylish in a very late 90s, almost early 2000s way.
Yeah, in a real chill out room at the rave kind of look.
Yeah, and even though the effects are dated and they look of the time, the violence does not feel dated, and it still feels so fucking impressive. So before we move on to the next film, I really wanted to talk about that final scene, that final confrontation with Deacon Frost, where everything just hits the fan. The mythology of the vampires, Blade's control over himself and even control over his thirst, and that final confrontation between him and Frost. What did you think of it?
I love that when Deacon becomes, you know, and they clearly are using the effects of the era. You have, like, the vampires vaporizing and stuff like that. But I really am so glad that when Deacon becomes the blood god, when he becomes imbued with the blood god, that he doesn't take a different form. His eyes go red. Like, it allows this, you understand what has happened, but you don't have to deal with the rubbery 1998 CGI of, like, Blade fighting a creature that is beyond the scope of what the movie would have been able to credibly render, especially in a mostly well-lit, fast-moving action scene. And so what is so great about that scene, even though, like, Stephen Dorff is no Wesley Snipes in terms of, like, the physical prowess of, like, a screen fighter, what that scene boils down to is you've had this incredible hero-villain tension. Like, they really do feel essential to each other. They really do feel like two sides of the same coin. And you have this excellent fight that has just enough addition of trickery and camera work to, like, speed things up and make things look a little bit more supernatural, because you have fully blood-satisfied Blade and you have blood god Deacon. And the meat of that fight, you don't have to have it be like the Staithe versus Snipes. You don't need Scott Adkins versus Snipes to make it compelling, because you're so invested in their hero-villain tension that it's just awesome to see them. But you've been waiting all movie to get these two in the ring with each other. And the fact that they put them in a physical arena, basically, to have them do battle, and that you have Blade, like, you've got Blade with the sword. He doesn't, because so often in the movies he has, like, a turtleneck or, like, some sort of, like, active compression wear underneath his vest. And this is just Blade in his vest with his fucking Wesley Snipes arms fully unsheathed underneath. And he is a beautiful man. Wesley Snipes is a beautiful man. And I think a thing we can't really say enough about is how able he is to create a connection between himself and the audience for 3 whole movies while wearing mostly sunglasses. You seeing his eyes in these movies is like the exception to the rule, but you feel like you are tracking every movement from him. And the use of props within, like, you have a sword, obviously, but they have the serum, they have the like elixir that's been formed by Karen and Whistler, and he's got this like strap of needles on his thigh, and if he can like inject that into Deacon, he can kill him. And so like the way it ends up with like the marriage of technology and brute force in these movies is where so much of like the artistry and I think sort of like the interesting visuals come from. And the fact that it ends with him just like getting poison like kicked into his body like incredibly by Wesley Snipes, and then he basically explodes into a blood bomb is a perfect way for a vampire to be vanquished. And then what does he go to Russia at the very end in the button?
Yeah.
I could have done an entire movie of Russian nightlife vampire slaying.
Oh, 100% with Wesley Snipes speaking a fairly decent Russian.
Great. Okay. I will trust this. I'm glad to have this coming in from a primary source. I'm very glad
like,
to hear
what?
that.
It's always like, first of all, the two like supporting characters in that almost post-credits Russian scene are actual Russians, which is a novelty for most American-made movies featuring Russian speakers.
Yeah, I would bet so.
But Wesley Snipes, well done, sir, because his Russian is actually not bad. Probably phonetically learned, but it's a very difficult language for people who are not native speakers. So I'm always very impressed by people who manage to speak like sound they actually know.
One more thing Wesley Snipes can do.
I know, right? The man, like, the talents of Wesley Snipes know no bounds. But to your point about the costuming, which I think is so interesting, is that it actually, and this will become a recurring thing in all the films, right? Mm-hmm. We'll talk a lot more about this with Blade Trinity, because that's just choices. It's his uniform. This is a superhero uniform. Like, everything is so tightly bound, because even as a daywalker, his main power, really, aside from all the super strength and all of that, is the fact his ability to control the thirst. No vampire can do that. He's the only one who can do that. Yep. And the fact that he is like, whenever his elements, his uniform is taken apart and taken away from him, that intrinsically becomes a vulnerable moment, because yes, Wesley Snipes is a physically impressive man. He was like at his physical peak at this time. He's very imposing physically, but it's not really about the size of him. It's about how he handles his body. Yep. Like the stillness that I mentioned before. So when Blade is stripped, physically from his vest, from the compression turtleneck that he's wearing, from his sunglasses, from his coat, all of those things, they're ripping apart kind of his ways of controlling everything that he is. That is just slightly too much for a human being. Mm-hmm. But because he's in that awkward, potentially dangerous in between, it's all about self-control for him. Mm-hmm. And I'd completely forgotten about that meditation scene that we get with Blade, where it's the centering of himself. Like, that's entirely his will. The entire first film is about Blade reining in those facets of him and controlling them and sublimating them into something that is positive and something that is protecting, even in an invisible subterranean kind of way, for the majority of the human world, protecting humans. It's not flashy. It's all entirely purpose-filled.
Mm-hmm. And like you said, that is something we will get into explicitly with the fashion in 3.
Oh, yeah. I have a whole section about that. I listed out all the fashion choices. Before we get into Blade Trinity, we have to talk about the sequel, Blade 2, from 2002.
There's a world beyond the one we know, where the powers of darkness fear nothing but one man. Stop! Blade.
We represent the ruling body of the vampire nation. They're offering you a truce. They want to meet with you.
You sure about this?
They'll take us in deeper than we've ever been.
Now, those he has sworn to kill need his help to fight a new breed of terror.
They're no longer top of the food chain.
Our forces are ready to fight, but we need a leader.
Let me get this right. You want me to hunt them. For you?
Ooh, so exciting. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Keep your friends close. Keep your enemies closer.
Here I am, Blade. Wesley Snipes.
Not know who you are messing with!
Blade 2.
Okay. I'm going to take it from the fact that you haven't mentioned it that much that this is not your favorite Blade.
It's not my favorite Blade, and because to me it doesn't feel like a Blade movie. Like I if it was something else, if it was a different hero and everything else was the same, I think I would like this movie more. But what Blade 3 does for me that I love all the Scream movies. All of them. I love 3. I love 4. And I love all the Scream movies because I like hanging out with my Scream friends. I like hanging out with my Woodsboro gang. I love the on-screen chemistry. I love the way they relate to one another. I love Sidney Prescott more than anything. I just want to go and hang out with those people and their characters and the way they relate to each other. And my God, Courtney Cox, incredible. That is a constant throughout all of these movies. What I see in 2 is because things get so much bigger around him, because the mystery of what the creatures are is such a focal, like we have to holy shit, there's this new thing. There's so much less, it feels like there's just so much less Blade being Blade. And I love Ron Perlman. And I love his banter with Blade is one of my favorite parts of that second movie. Because I think it's still giving me what I most value about the character. And the way that it brings in the love story for the second one, I feel like it's, amidst all of the action that is going on, it's asking, again, I think it's asking to prove something about Blade that we already know is true, which is that he does feel and that connection does matter to him and that he will self-sacrifice. And but I can't really ever get past, because the vaporizing of the vampires is something that's humorously CGI'd, and even up through 3. It looks, the effects of the vampires disappearing looks the same kind of in 3 as it does in 1. Mm-hmm. They just we picked an aesthetic, we're running with it. And in 2, it's this case of that era around the early 2000s when George Lucas decided to put a bunch of computer trash in his original Star Wars movies because this was my original artistic intent, and we have the technology now, so I'm gonna put this other scene with Jabba walking around with Han Solo in, even though it made Jabba look like just a normal 6-foot tall worm. It was Jabba is deeply unimpressive when you have him just walking to the Millennium Falcon with Han Solo. What the fuck's going on? And just minimized the scale and intimidating power of Jabba so much. And you watch those Lucas edits, and it's yeah, but we didn't have the technology yet. You think we do because it's better than it was in the 1970s and 1980s, but we don't actually have the technology to go back in and fuck with the text the way you want to. So you watch those re-edits and it's like, this looks like somebody at home put computer-generated aliens into Star Wars that weren't supposed to be there. And when you watch Blade 2, the technology was getting so much better and the Matrix had happened. The Matrixization of Blade in the second film. There are fight scenes that look so rubbery. Like there's that one in front of the backlighting between Blade and one of, like, he'll soon discover that it's one of his allies. But that initial fight where at one point one of them jumps it might have been Blade, does like a corkscrew spin in the air and like comes down to kick the adversary. And I watch and I'm just like, oh, this looks like when they went too hard in the Neo and Mr. Smith fights in like 2 and 3. And it just looked like he was fighting a bunch of Gumbies in a video game. And Blade, the one of the coolest parts about, one of the most effective parts about First Blade is how hard that action hits and how good those fight scenes are. And it takes away from, to me, the natural ability and appeal of Wesley Snipes to digitize him like that, because it makes the fights actually hit softer. And Blade is hard edged. Like, Blade is not like any of the other Marvel properties that have been released. So when you make it feel as glorious as Guillermo del Toro monster movies are, they're fantastic. They're fantastical. They feel like fantasy other worlds. Blade doesn't feel like fantasy. Blade feels like hard sci-fi. Blade feels like a sci-fi ass kicking. That is not even what Hellboy feels like. Hellboy feels like a magical world.
So this is the interesting point, is the fact that Blade 2 is both, needs to be a sequel to Blade, but also needs to be, because of the nature of who he is and how he makes films and the sheer powerful force of his imagination and his visual imagination, a Guillermo del Toro film.
It's exactly. And when Guillermo del Toro makes a film, it should be a Guillermo del Toro film. I don't want Guillermo del Toro to make a movie and have to plug and play into someone else's vision. I don't want that at all. So I get it.
And I think actually having rewatched it yesterday, it feels much more cohesive with the Guillermo del Toro expanded universe than it does with the Blade universe. Even though I like it as a film, I like it a lot.
Yes.
The point that you were making about the fight sequences, I have this image of dust lifting off of Blade whenever he gets hit, because you can see that that's a hit. Like, there is that hard edge. There are consequences to that fight, to that contact. Here it's slightly glossier in a fantastical way, and there's even designs that then we see in subsequent Del Toro films. Like, there's certain elements that he will gravitate towards. But what I wanted to ask is, like, how there's something really specific that he brings to the table with the sequel, and it's obviously the Reapers and the design of the Reapers.
Yes.
And making the vampire even more monstrous in this film than they happened before. It's a lot more of, you mentioned Nosferatu versus, say, Bela Lugosi's Dracula as the two original cinematic counterpoints of what a vampire looks like. This feels to me that Del Toro is bringing a lot more Nosferatu into a Draculian world,
which makes total sense for him. And I think a fundamental thing about me and Blade 2 is basically I need to get over myself. Not because I should like the movie more than I do. I can feel however I want to feel about it. But I have to reconcile in my mind that two things can be true at once. I cannot like this as a Blade movie, and I can like it as a Guillermo del Toro movie. And as a Guillermo del Toro movie, I do enjoy this. The rubbery fight scenes I kind of will never forgive. I like that. Like, I like the Reapers. Like, I like the creatures. They're cool. I like that he, yes, make it an uneasy vampire alliance. That's a perfect direction for the story to go into. That makes total sense. Like, it just becomes a monster of the week if you just have him constantly killing vampires. Like, if you go on every installment. I like that. I like that device. The love story bit was just a little too soft for me. It was too, I don't want that softness in a Blade movie. I'm like, no, fuck that. Like, he's beyond that. Like, he cares for humans and he has compassion and he is half human, but like keep that trifling shit out of here. Like, and again, as a person who just like gets annoyed at like unnecessary relationships being stuck into movies,
and also frankly there was no chemistry between them.
There was none. And I loved Dr. Karen and him so much. I think I had a grudge that it wasn't Karen. I was like, where the fuck's Karen? Like, where is... I was happy to see Whistler again, because I'm always happy to see Whistler. And the durability of that character, fucking why not? Like, okay. But, like, I watched the movie, and it feels like it feels like he borrowed Blade to do another thing that wasn't Blade, and I don't feel like that is as honoring of the Blade vibe that was so established in one, that it's like, no, what I like about this is like the world of Blade. You've given me the movie now, the world of GDT, and you've put Blade in it. That's cool. But what about Blade's world? That's also cool, and I would like to go back to that. Like, I want to go back to Pearl. I want to go back to Udo Kier. Like, I feel like there are two sort of, when you have certain actors in movies, they tell you things about those movies. Ron Perlman and Guillermo del Toro, a great union. Oh. When you put Ron Perlman in a genre movie, it tells you a little bit about the tone of that movie. Like, when you have Ron Perlman's in Alien Resurrection, right? Like, he's in the...
Don't remember, but I know that because we literally covered it in the previous episode of this podcast, and I was also diving back into my Guillermo del Toro book with all his drawings and sketches and diaries and stuff. There's a beautiful little letter from Ron Perlman crediting Guillermo del Toro as being, well, first of all, his work with him on Kronos, which is a low-budget Mexican vampire film that never uses the word vampire, and made by like a then 29-year-old Guillermo, which is just obscene. Obscene.
Yeah, but, fuck you, man.
Just like, no, I want to be adopted by you. Like, that's what I would like to do. But point being that Ron Perlman said that was the first time he was kind of in a career slump. That was the first time he'd worked with Del Toro, and he consistently sought out and worked with first time and more indie directors because of the sheer fun of that experience and how joyful and playful it was. And I love their collaboration. It goes hand in hand. Del Toro always putting him in his movies, whatever the role is, and knowing exactly what notes to strike. Because Perlman, I think, similarly to Snipes, without that like leading man, powerful star charisma, he is a perfection of a character actor.
Ron Perlman is exactly what he is supposed to be in everything he has ever done.
Yes.
Ron Perlman is a fucking treasure. And it's because he has, you know, I think people would say like maybe an unconventional look. He truly, like, his energy is so strong on screen and his presence is so specific that when like something like The City of Last Children, where he's so beautiful. He's so compelling. Ron Perlman is so watchable, and he makes such wonderful choices on screen, and he uses his very specific dominating physicality to such perfect effect, whether he is meant to be a gentle figure like in City of Last Children, or like he is meant to be like a gentle violent creature like he is in Hellboy, or he's meant to be just a shit-talking asshole like he is in Blade 2. The best thing about Blade 2 is Ron Perlman. Like, and I think it's because it's a Guillermo del Toro movie. And and what I was getting to in that was like, when you look for certain actors and they tell you what kind of movie you're about to watch, you know Udo Kier's there, you know that you're in for some like probably fucked up shit. Like, you see Ron Perlman there, and you know that like this is going to be, and you know it's like a genre movie. It's like, this is going to be eccentric. This is going to be surreal. And like he was in Alien Resurrection, which is a Jean-Pierre Jeunet movie, who also did City of Last Children. So like his connections with Guillermo del Toro and Jeunet I love that part of Ron Perlman's work. And I think that those are filmmakers that have made the best use of that incredible, gorgeous, specific presence that is Ron Perlman. And I watch something like this, and it feels, Blade is the center. It's called Blade 2. He shouldn't feel like he's a visitor in another kind of story. And that's what he feels like in this. And so it's not as fruitful for me as a Blade movie, even if I love the club fight scene. I love when it's them versus the Reapers. The like underground in the tunnels being pursued by all the Reapers. That's cool as shit. Like there's a lot of stuff that I like in isolation about Blade 2 that I just wish wasn't a Blade movie, because I'm not getting to see, like, you want the character to evolve, I guess? I kind of don't. Like, I don't actually need Blade to grow as a person. I don't actually need him to, like, learn something else about himself. He does that enough, but the problem in Blade's world is that he doesn't get what's going on. It's that nobody else around him does. It's that, Blade is more in on the joke than anybody else around him from the vampire side or the human side. This is about everybody else needing to get on Blade's level in each Blade movie. So, like, I actually don't need him to have, like, a more different... I don't need him to learn, like, a new kind of skill or, like, level of human empathy. I just kind of need to see him be better than everybody.
I think there's something that I previously to rewatching them yesterday, I would confidently always say that Blade 2 was my favorite Blade film.
Okay. And that is absolutely a school of fandom. That is absolutely a school of fandom, is the Blade 2 is my ride or die.
I will now recant that opinion and say that actually it's one of my favorite Guillermo del Toro movies.
Yeah. I hear that.
But not my number one out of the Blade franchise.
Sure.
One of the things that really struck me is that, and to echo all the points that you've been making, is that this feels like a vampire family drama.
Yes.
A vampire dynasty as opposed to a Blade film. So it feels like Blade is infringing on his own sequel in this film.
Yeah.
And I'm going to use that as a segue to ask you, kind of, what do you make of, really, you know, we've talked about Blade and what he's allowed to do and how he's not perhaps being the most Blade he can be in this film. But what do you make of the real story of Blade 2, which is actually about this conspiracy and this, you know, Shakespearean dynamic between the old pureblood vampire who wants a new master vampire race and his two children?
No, and that I think that's why that's why there's a sort of persistent frustration for me with Blade 2, because I love that shit. Like, I want give me a whole segment of, we're not going to get GDT's Hellboy 3, but if we wanted to continue on with Guillermo's, like, vampire lore universe, that would be fucking sweet. That would be high-end, top-of-line shit Underworld. That would be A-list Underworld is what that would be. And like I was saying, like, and I think it goes back to what I was saying with, like, the way Blade 1 is like a milkshake of kinds of cool, in where, like, stylistically and sort of in that icy techno baroque way of the Matrix, and then also the expansive artistic bisexual lighting way that John Wick does the same thing with its culture of assassins and the high table and the markers and the specific vernacular of it. What we get in Parabellum, when he goes to the fucking ballet school, when he goes to the ballet in Parabellum, and you're like, holy shit, now we're at Russian ballet. We're in this extremely artistically adorned back room with Angelica fucking Houston is here. Like, it is so gorgeous. I could live in that ballet theater for an entire John Wick movie and be like, can we just have the spin-off web series that's just the politics of this weird abusive ballet school?
Don't get me started on the dark underbelly of Soviet and Russian ballet schools. That's all the shit that I want to see at any point of the day.
This is the same thing. I feel the same way. I think there are few richer palettes to explore than that. I want so much. Fuck you, Red Sparrow, for all the things you did. Why was that movie not just a psychosexual drama about, like, the ballet in Russia? Like, why wasn't that the epicenter of everything? And that is what is so sad. That's what's really enticing about Blade 2. I want more of that. That is definitely an extension That is a GDT style built off extension of what that does in 1, where you get that immediate sense of there's this completely realized world that has been around longer than humans, that is just built under, like, I imagine the idea of like of the underpass in Us. The idea that right below everything we do, there is a mirror community where the darker version of everything is happening. And the idea, the possibility of getting to explore more of that, it's both, it's unfair to the Blade franchise, because it's like, it doesn't serve me as a Blade movie watching this, but I want more of what it is doing. But the third movie had to make a choice of what it was going to do, and I love Trinity and the direction it decided to go in, where it like became a buddy comedy version of. It feels like a direct sequel almost to the first one, where they infuse little bits of like what we learned in 2, like those the animal vampire hybrids that we see in 3. Like those are very much the physical architecture of the Reapers. Like, and the Anna is putting a finger to yes, vampire Pomeranians. We see like Blade 3 couldn't be a direct sequel. It either had to be a direct sequel to 2 or kind of a direct sequel to 1. It kind of couldn't do both. And because the second one is like this in-between world of, is it for Blade fans? Is it for Del Toro fans? Can there be a ton of overlap there in what both of those fandoms want? I wanted to see more of what Blade 2 implied, but I didn't want any more of those Blade movies, but I wanted more of Del Toro's rich Byzantine fucking vampire politics movies. I would love a vampire family drama. That's why I'm so glad that there is that underworld offshoot with Rhoda Mitra, where we like go back in time for it and get to see more about how the world can, like, throw a prequel in there. Fuck yeah, throw a prequel in there. Give me how we got to this point as realized in the way that really only Del Toro is able to do, from both sources of sense of imagination and the amount of funding that he would get from any studio to have him make that movie. Like, they'll trust Del Toro or something like that. So I like it so much, and I just wish it wasn't in my Blade movie, because I give me a whole other original vampire story where you do that, because I will follow you to the end of time, telling me all about these crazy tales of how we arrived at modern vampire, like, interfaction warfare, family warfare.
I want to see that so bad. I would pay a whole nother streaming subscription service alongside all of the ones that I have already to see that.
That is a true testament to commitment in this, is being like, give me another streaming service. I'm begging you.
Just like the Vampire Channel, that's just this one series.
Vampires would go so much higher on my list of appointment viewing if we could do that. If we could, like, John Wick Bladeify vampire stories and have someone on the level of Del Toro making these gorgeously realized movies. Oh my god, yeah.
But
amazing.
First, let the man make In the Mountains of Madness first, because that's been going on for ages, and I want to see it as well. Yeah, but
it's just about time.
I mean, at the point where you brought up the Vampire Pomeranian, I knew we needed to move on to Blade Trinity. So before we do that, I've been waiting for an hour and 15 minutes to do that. Is there anything about Blade 2 that you wanted to touch upon?
I'm so glad they brought back Whistler. I'm so glad that they brought back Whistler, that we got to see and I think it's meant to be, but like my favorite relationship across is the tenderness between Blade and Whistler, and watching him have a father, like, that is very sweet. And again, that just unreplaceable, unreplicable Chris Christopherson kind of growl against the, like, handsome, young, vibrant, youthful Wesley Snipes. It's just so good. And I love like it for, like, the moments that it does work. I love watching the goofiness of Blade interact with this world where he's just like, what in the great fuck is going on here? Like, because Wesley Snipes can make anything work in that way. But yeah, I feel like Blade 2 is a movie that I feel like I have to revisit throughout my life. I have to just keep watching it every now and again to, like, train myself to watch it for what it is instead of what my brain keeps telling me it's supposed to be. And it's just, it's like a slow process of like developing an appreciation for a food you didn't like before, where it's like, well, it's never going to be my favorite food, but I definitely know I at least like it on toast. Kind of thing. Like, I'm not going to eat it like uni. I hate uni on its own. An uni butter? Well, that's a nice treat. How can I find my way to Blade becoming like an uni butter situation where I want to like embrace it for what it is instead of just being like, yeah, but where's Blade?
Uni butter is not the segue that I was waiting for, but it's the one that I will take. Before we fully move on to Blade Trinity, I just wanted to very quickly mention, the only thing that I did not remember about this film was the disrespect that it paid to Donnie Yen by making him mute.
Really good point. Really, really good point. That's some bullshit. That is some bullshit.
Big bullshit. Fucking Scud gets all of those one-liners and absolutely no character and serves no purpose. Could have been. We didn't need a new early noughties Norman Reedus for that role. We really did not.
No, we did not.
You got Donnie Yen.
We got Donnie Yen, and it's like I was talking about Expendables 2 recently, and Jet Li is in a, he's not in like peak physical form right now. Like there are issues as he's gotten older, but like in Expendables 2, Jet Li is in it so briefly that it's almost like why is he here to be underserved? And then he exits the movie. It's very at the beginning. He's only in the intro opening fight scene, and then he's gone. What is Donnie Yen doing here if this isn't about Donnie Yen? He's a fucking legend. So like,
come on.
Like, honestly, this had been a Donnie Yen movie, and you'd made a Donnie Yen Del Toro vampire movie.
Listen.
Holy shit, man. Ends of the earth. Go to the ends of the earth for that. Like, that would have worked for me 100%.
I needed a little less Chupa and a little more Donnie Yen.
Yeah. Completely agree. Yes.
So on that note, let's finally talk about Blade Trinity from 2004.
I have to ask you a couple of questions. What can you tell me about vampires?
They exist.
Blade. First, he faced their gods. Then he battled their demons. But all that was only the beginning.
He's come back.
Vampire final solution.
You can't win this war alone.
Who the hell are you people?
My father meant for us to help you.
Whistler's daughter. What the hell makes you think you know about hunting vampires?
Just for starters, I used to be one.
Blade Trinity.
There's nothing stopping them now.
There's me.
I can't believe this film was from 2004.
Does it feel too late or too early?
It feels too early because it's not that long of a distance between Blade 2 and Blade Trinity. And yet somehow in the story and in especially Wesley Snipes' portrayal of Blade here, it feels like it's been at least a decade just in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So really, as an opener question for this, what does this film add to the franchise of Blade and to his character?
I would say so much. I don't get. I think in the way that people would be like, that people could very rightfully be like, I don't get why you're not on board with Blade 2. Like, what's your problem? I mirror that to them. I'm like, I don't get what you don't like about Blade 3. What's your problem? Like, if you liked Blade 1, it's not as good as Blade 1. I'm not saying that. If you like, why do you hate 3? Like, what is so far removed from 1 that 3 is that you're like, oh no, fuck that. We don't talk about that. What? It's more Blade 1 than Blade 2 is. I am fully admittedly, full disclosure, I'm so in the bag for the Ryan Reynolds mid-2000s funny guy in comedy insert thing. We loved that in my house growing up. Like one of our favorite house movies. And when I say that, I'm kind of always referring to my mom. My dad was like doing his own thing. We fucking love the movie Just Friends. In our house, Just Friends is a Christmas classic.
Jordan, I had Van Wilder on DVD and I rewatched that shit unironically. I thought Ryan Reynolds was a comedic genius.
A comedic genius! He's so good in the way that a presence like him who's deployed to be sort of what they, not necessarily themselves, because I don't know the guy, but themselves as far as what the persona crafted and presented to us is, he executes on that every time. Ryan Reynolds has never let anyone down showing up and doing the Ryan Reynolds. You watch Hobbs and Shaw. He exists in that movie for like 8 minutes to be Ryan Reynolds. Yeah. It's funny as shit. I'm all in for it. God, I love that movie. But like, he's such a, it takes Blade and it becomes like self-aware Blade, which doesn't, like, I didn't need that to have happened, but the fact that they went with the choice, he's such an appropriate foil. He's the perfect foil for Wesley's Blade if you're gonna go in that direction, to at once poke fun at the seriousness of Blade, while also being 100% of the time the butt of the joke. Blade is never the butt of the joke in Blade Trinity, and that's why it works. Because to have one more person that Blade can look askance at the entire time, every time he shits on Ryan Reynolds in this movie, it's funny. Every time. Like, and like the point where they're on the top of a building and they're shaking down a guy to get him to give up information, and they just drop his head down on the ground. Oh, that's what it's Blade 3 is when the guy's cell phone rings and Wesley looks over at him and goes, "Oh, it's you." And he like answers his phone for him. And like they're walking away and Ryan is doing his like nervous talking banter thing. And then he just looks at Blade and he just goes, "I had a lot of sugar today." And Blade just looks at him like he is the stupid motherfucker that he is. And then it cuts to Jessica Biel's reaction shot and she looks at Hannibal King. His name is Hannibal King also. For looking at him like the stupid motherfucker that he is. That's gold. I'm in. I'm all in. It's funny as hell. I love odd couple buddy comedy Blade. And this movie is doing the most. We exchanged a couple messages last night when like in and around both of us watching this watching the movie, because I watched Blade 3 last night too. This is the gayest Blade. This is the gayest Blade movie. Because the thing is, any movie where you are showcasing 2000s Ryan Reynolds' body the way that this movie is, gay. Ryan Reynolds' Amityville Horror, canonically queer horror cinema. The way he wears those jammy pants that are impossibly hanging onto his body despite riding so low, gay. The way in this, like, at one point on Twitter, I posted it was last year sometime. I was like, I just want the oral history of how Ryan Reynolds' pants stayed up, despite him doing everything he does in the third act of Amityville Horror, and those being as low to a threshold of exposing him in many ways as they possibly could. He responded to it in the most Ryan Reynolds fashion, and he said, "I'll never tell," and then in parentheses, he said, "It was Staples." So, like, you could hear his Ryan Reynolds sarcasm voice coming through. It was ideal. But, like, this movie, when you have Hannibal King in restraints, shirtless, and you have that definitive 2000s Men's Health body cover body of Ryan Reynolds. I have a friend my best friend's sister is a personal trainer, and the two most popular people she would get when she opened her business, when clients would come in and saying what do you want to look like? Jessica Biel, Ryan Reynolds. Those were the two most common examples she got. Like, I just want to tone up. Jessica Biel, Ryan Reynolds. Those were like the bodies of record in the 2000s for like aspirational athleticism, lean build kind of thing. And you have Ryan Reynolds in restraints on his knees in this movie, shirtless and glistening with that torso, gay. You have that moment where he tells Blade that he used to be a vampire, and how does he tell him? He slightly lifts his shirt, pushes down the hem of his jeans to the lowest threshold one could to reveal his tattoo that was put on him by Parker Posey's Danica Talos. That's not where anybody else's tattoo. They show us familiar and vampire tattoos these whole movies. They show them on your neck, they pull something up on an arm. She tattooed that shit below his belly button, like onto his groin. We see upper pubic hair when he does that. That is so fucking gay. Come on.
That is a male version of a tramp stamp.
Yeah, it is.
The fact that Hannibal King's vamp stamp is on his like upper pubic area, it's just genuinely, I think it would not be outside of the realms of his character to have requested it to be there, because he just wants to show off the lower abs. And that's what he wants to do.
He's worked very hard, and he should. But even in spite of all of that thirst trapping that is laid out before us, the queerest thing about this movie is Parker Posey. The performance that Parker Posey is giving in this movie is high-ass camp. Like, Danica Talos is an incredible character. When she meets Blade, when she walks into the fucking frame, and she meets Blade, and just watching her drip over him with her, like, white foundation and the thick black eye that she's wearing the entire time, with that crazy slicked back and yet volumized hair. She wears like a tight dress to go antagonize Blade in a police station. Like, this is by all means, they're going to like capture him and probably take him back to their vampire lair. It's like a hostage abduction. And she wears evening wear. She's constantly wearing heels. She leans into him and she's like, "Hey, Blade." And the way she says his name, the way she hits those L's, it's like she hates every word she's saying, but she's not going to hold back on a single bit of it. She's like, "Hey, Blade, like, I'm a big fan of your work." And then like eye rolls at him. It's like, this is incredible. If you make Parker Posey the organizing principle around which Blade 3 is built, it actually makes perfect sense and is an incredible action comedy weird queer horror hybrid. Blade Trinity is queer horror, is what I'm saying.
I couldn't agree more, and I think the biggest argument to like confirm your statement is actually Dracula / Drake. And,
oh my god! Speaking of queer presence on screen.
And I will give you two reasons. A, the fact that his name is Drake for the majority of this film. Not Drac, not the Count, not Dracula, Drake.
Not Dagon. Yeah, it's Drake.
And also the leather low-rise pants.
Red leather low-rise pants with like a pirate shirt on that has had the chest cut out of it.
Yeah.
This man is a bear. This man is a hot commodity in the gay club scene of whatever fucking city we existed with this movie. This is incredible stuff.
And I will add another layer of like fashion-related choices that this movie makes.
Yes.
Is the fact that the bright blood red vest that Blade wears. By the way, the first item of colored clothing that Blade wears. Mm-hmm. He's been wearing black for 2 films.
Yeah.
Perfectly color coordinates with the dark brown, almost burgundy leather of Drake's low-rise leather pants.
They are the lowest
match
rise.
Made in heaven.
They're the lowest rise leather pants. And Dominic Purcell has such broad shoulders. He's like a real barrel chest on him. But what you see in those pants is that he actually seems to have rather slender hips. Like like the way those pants, I was like, oh, he's slender hips, but is he just like built big on top? And he has that just like incredible head jaw. He's so handsome, and he just looks like such such a meaty man. You have him showing down with Blade, and it's like, this is two vampires trying to top each other, is what Blade Trinity is in its fight scenes. Like, there's the incredible, because he's been awakened by the lesser vampires, by Danica and her brother
by the poser
Asher.
vampires.
Yeah, by the new money poser vampires, which bless this movie for opening with a bunch of vampires going to Egypt, getting out of a plane in like sunproof suits, and one of them looks up and flips off the sun. This movie opens with one of those vampires flipping off the sun before they go free Dracula. And I love that, I truly love that he doesn't want to be there. Dracula doesn't want to be there. As Danica makes clear, Parker Posey's character, we did not capture him. He allowed us to take him. He's like, all right, bitch, make your case. What the shit am I doing here? He sees all of them as fucking frivolous. He's like, as he says, we've become a shadow of our former selves. You embarrass me. The only one in the movie, the only one for centuries, because he went into hiding because he was like, you guys are fucking pathetic. I can't even be around you vampires anymore. He like went into self-imposed exile and buried himself. And then he meets Blade and he's like, finally a worthy adversary. And he's like, he talks about how he's immortal, and Blade's like, I've heard dozens, thousands of you say that time and time again. You're not immortal. You all say that, but then you end up at the tip of my blade. And he acquiesces that one. He's like, perhaps I will. Like, but we will find out in combat where men truly reveal what they are. And the idea that this counterpart to Drake is Blade, and that he is like the one man worthy of him, and that they have this like almost romantic final showdown between the two of them, where Drake is finally engaged in combat with somebody who can match him. Like, he's prepared to die a good death. And he respects Blade. He appreciates Blade. And it's like, I'm not tabling the homoerotic tension here, not least of all with that open-chested shirt and those leather pants on screen. And I think we can make a very strong case too, and many lesbians I know would agree, that canonically gay is also Jessica Biel in her tactical fashions. The tactical fashions on Jessica Biel in this movie, I hope, is the root of at least dozens of millennial lesbians out there. Because as we discussed this too in DMs, Blade 3 is so aware of the people that it has in its movie. It's got bare-chested Dominic Purcell. It's got Ryan Reynolds' torso all over. There is the incredible moment where I love the reveal of Jessica Biel's character, Abby, in this, where she's there, they're springing Blade because he's been captured by the cops because he killed a familiar that he thought was a vampire, but no, joke's on him. So they get him, they apprehend him, and then the Night Stalkers, even with their stupid name, the Night Stalkers show up to spring Blade, and it's Hannibal King and it's Abigail. And when they're going through the halls to get out of this police station, you hear Hannibal yell, like, Whistler, let's go! And you're like, oh shit, Whistler, Abby's a Whistler! Like, I love the familial connection there, and the way you see Blade register it, like, what the fuck? Because at this point, Whistler is finally dead. Until I refuse to accept that Mahershala Ali's Blade will not bring back Chris Christopherson yet again, because
I was about to say, I'm pretty sure he will.
Why, how could you not? And when you meet Whistler, when you meet Abby Whistler, this movie has the wherewithal to not only, like, we see Jessica Biel plenty in tank tops in this movie. We see that. This movie is so clever in its awareness of Jessica Biel at this moment in time. We see her not only in without sleeves, she is in a top that has sleeves that unzip. There is a grand costume unveiling of Jessica Biel's unparalleled fucking guns as she unzips her leather sleeves to reveal them, because there's just too much muscle in there to be contained by leather, so she can, like, whip around and start killing bitches with her archery skills. What a fucking moment. The whole intro of her character, because we I think the first time we see her is when she's on the subway platform. And the Night Stalkers go out and they tempt vampires. They're out there baiting them. So she, like, is dressed as a single mom. She's got a crying, like doll baby on her chest. She's trying to draw attention to herself. She gets sieged by a handful of vampires. And the way she whips off her like bedraggled mom jacket and has those very 2000s like chunky curls, those chunky wavy curls styled in. Her whole like arms bowed out to the side like sheriffs in town walk that she does when she is approaching the vampires in that scene. It's like, ma'am, you've just killed all the lesbians. You've just killed them straight away. Like, it is a remarkably, so much of this movie, up and down, is so wonderfully homosexual. And for that reason, I am obsessed. I've said this many times on social media. It's like, I want, like, God, am I going to watch something new tonight, or am I going to watch Blade again? Like, well, is it one of those Blade nights? And that means I'm either going to watch Blade or Blade Trinity, but kind of every movie I could potentially watch is in competition with would I rather be watching Blade right now. So, like, and Blade Trinity is absolutely that, like, alternate back and forth. I can just put this movie on anytime and enjoy myself so much.
I think the reveal of Jessica Biel's arms is not only, I would say it's the second gayest bit about Blade Trinity. We will come to the first bit, to the first element, but it's also weirdly, like you mentioned earlier, it's utilizing both the thing about Ryan Reynolds that we want to see. We want to see his torso. That's what we want to see.
Yep.
And also, frankly, Jessica Biel, her body is being utilized to maximum effect in this film, but not sexualizing her.
No.
She's not being objectified. She's not being paraded for us to ogle at her. It's like, no, this girl is an archer. Her arms are strong as fuck.
She is that is one of
she
in the way that
space leather cannot contain that. In the same way as like when Blade like takes off the turtleneck and is just in his vest. It's like, yeah, that's when shit gets real.
Yes,
when she unzips the leather jacket, that's when the violence is about to commence. People,
yes, that's what we know. It's real. And I one of much like Scream is my favorite horror franchise. I love those movies for so many reasons. But one of the things that has always meant the most to me about them is that it's a completely asexual bunch of movies. Like, so often in horror, in anything, but it's trafficked in horror so much, violence and sexual, like, release are conflated. And, you know, you can be enjoying a horror movie, but still, you know, you feel unsafe in a fun way because you're like, ooh, people are in danger. But it's easy to feel unsafe in a bad way, where you start feeling like you can't actually trust the person. You don't feel like you're in good hands with the person who's making the film because maybe their intentions or their gaze or what they want to get out of like the women or the more vulnerable characters on screen are actually kind of gross, and that they're just utilizing this opportunity in this kind of film to kind of like do a fantasy thing or fulfill something that it's not necessary to the story, but they just sort of want to see. They want to exploit women or marginalized queer folks, brown people, black or brown people in peril because that's like, yeah, that's good horror. Scream, there's never a connection between like knife penetration and death and sexual violence in Scream. It is completely off the table. And that makes me feel really comfortable. That makes me feel really happy. And as, again, someone on the spectrum, I like it when sex just like doesn't have to be part of the equation because we relate over sex and who's having it all the time. It's relieving sometimes. It's refreshing to see it not be a part of it. And I think that's the thing I like about action cinema so much, is it does tend to be fairly sexless in that way. Like, for someone who, like, you know, is as full of his like big dick joke gusto as The Rock often is in his movies, like The Rock and Will Smith are kind of like famously not sexual entities on screen in these big action films they front. And even often Tom Cruise, like rarely is Tom Cruise a sexualized person on screen. And what you have in these movies, this is not as sexual as vampires are. In their like, it's kind of what separates them from the hunters in these movies, is that they're these like sexual beings and deviant, not in the sense of like queerness is perversion, but like they'll drink your blood while killing you, and like that's sexual for them. Like, you see there is sex present in the universe, and that is so inextricable from, you know, the presence of vampire as we understand it. It's a fun part about the presence of vampires and that as a monster, the horniest of all monsters. That is cool. I do like how in the it's just sort of a fraternity. It's just a sort of fraternity of people bound by this war. And I love that there is no sexual tension between Abby and Hannibal King. I love that they're like brother and sister. Like, even when Hannibal has been stabbed through the chest by Drake with a silver stake, and he's like convalescing back in their like boat HQ that they have, he's like in this, you know, MASH unit kind of operating room, and he's covered by like knit blankets and quilts. And Abby walks in, Blade walks in, Hannibal says something dumb because he always does, and Blade just walks away wordlessly, and he looks at Abigail and he just goes, he hates me, doesn't he? And she's like, yeah, he hates you. And there's not a moment where, like, he's saying they're bare-chested, nothing she hasn't seen before, but there isn't a, like, ooh, there's going to be a steamy glance between the two. And after Hannibal gets captured and she goes to spring him, there isn't, like, they don't rush a kiss in. It's not like, oh, I finally know how I feel about you. No, they're just fucking ass kickers together. That is what they do. And there's just, it's nice to see, it's fun to see. It doesn't encumber the story with, like, a romance that doesn't need to be there. And also that just so often goes wrong for the woman because it is so told for the advantage of the male character and the male audience. Have steaminess, have chemistry, have sexual energy, have that. I don't want to see it actually if it's not done really well. I don't want to see it just inserted for fun. Like, I want to see it if it's fucking good, if it's fucking steamy and powerful, and it actually adds something to these characters. But in a Blade movie in 2004, that's not where I want to see us take a chance on how you're going to make Jessica Biel the object of somebody's affection. Abso-fucking-lutely not. We know too much and are revisiting too much about what we know about 2000s era media culture for that to have been a good idea. And even when there is the scene where she comes back covered in blood, Abigail comes back to HQ covered in blood, and there's that shower scene where she's washing the blood off of her. I honestly find it to be beautiful. Like, did we need her nude in the shower? No, that wasn't a scene that had to be there. I think it is well done. And Jessica Biel, I hope she feels like when she looks back at that experience, it was comfortable and that she was in control and that she was in conversation with David S. Goyer, the director of it. I hope she feels positively about that scene because when I watch it, I really like it. The angles of it and the lighting of it are beautiful. Jessica Biel is beautiful. Her body is beautiful. And as it is presented to us as this vessel of power and strength in the film, even in that scene, we never see, like, private parts of her body exposed. They, do a good job with that. And that's obviously intentional. It is, I think, a moment to pause and appreciate the physical power of an amazing body like Jessica Biel's in that moment. That's not gross. That's not exploitative. And we should celebrate people's bodies, not only bodies that are like examples of fucking human perfection like Jessica Biel, all bodies. But the fact of a woman who is so strong, capable, battle-tested, a moment to recognize the beauty and intention of her form, that's good to me. And I also like that it's hot. Like, it can be all of those things, and I thought that that was really well done in this movie. In a movie that doesn't really incorporate nudity ever otherwise.
Yeah. And I feel really, really bad for bringing this up now after that beautiful, eloquent exploration of the use of bodies in Blade Trinity, but there's no way we cannot not talk about the vampire Pomeranian.
Oh, no. And I think that is, because it's crucial that we talk about the vampire Pomeranian for many reasons. One of them being, I have heard that kind of expressed the presence of the vampire Pomeranian as sort of a dig at this movie, as a microcosm example for why people are like, I mean, the fucking vampire Pomeranian is like a reason for it to be tossed off. But that reveal moment, I mean, the fact that throughout this movie, Triple H is frequently cuddling a tiny fucking Pomeranian. Like, let's review here. Triple H is in this movie. Hunter Hearst Helmsley is a supporting character vampire in this movie. John Michael Higgins plays a familiar in this movie. Eric Bogosian plays a talking head newsman in this movie. As you DM'd me last night, oh my god, I forgot Patton Oswalt and Natasha Lyonne are in this movie. Natasha Lyonne plays a blind scientist named Strawberry Fields. Come on. She wears red glasses. Patton Oswalt plays very much something that Patton Oswalt would play. He plays like the nerdy weapons specialist.
But to be honest, even I will preface this only because I have literally a couple of weeks ago finished Patton Oswalt's Silver Screen Fiend, and I could see his thought process on screen, and it was beautiful and delightful, and I could see all the effort and the overthinking that went into him thinking about the one moment where he handed Blade a weapon.
That, I mean, it felt like there's a there's a collegial energy that is very impressively immediately established when they think the group of Night Stalkers when you're with them at HQ. Right, when he sees Blade and he's like about to give like his weapons presentation, and he's there and he's in front of him, he's just like, oh Jesus, he's been confronted with his hero basically, like this, you really feel it. And then when he's giving his presentation, like, is it kind of tacked on? But when he's like gentleman and haughty, it was like, honestly, yes, like. These are a bunch of friends. They're hanging out. Patches is not disrespecting Jessica Biel. He's overwhelmed. He's a dork. She's really hot. Blade's here. It's a whole lot. And there's a great... It's such a tiny little moment in this movie. But just, we don't get much of them because most of the Night Stalkers get wiped out by Drake and his cronies, by Drake and his lesser vampires. And they're about ready to go hunting. And Abby, like, looks at... Patches, and he looks at her and he just goes, he's like, you want a party favor? And she just looks at him and goes, lucky sevens, and he just goes, done. It's like, I feel like Patton Oswalt was having so much goddamn fun in like the 5 minutes that he's in this movie. I just like the whole weapon reveal, like explaining the arc, like the bow that has the arc of UV light through it. I was like, yeah, this shit is cool. Like when I think of like continuing on the Blade journey, yeah, show me cool technological stuff like this. Like, give me 5 more of these movies where we just have a scene like this every time, where I learn new mythology, where I see new weapons, where I hear more about inter-vampire family political conflict. Like, give me all of these moments where we escalate the size of the world and its intricacies. I love that shit. And so, by the time we get to Vampire Pomeranian, Hannibal King has been trapped, he's been captured by the vampires, he's been bound up, he's shirtless, of course. He doesn't need to be, but they've taken his shirt off of him and he's a prisoner. And he's laying on the ground and he's like coming to consciousness, and there's a dog that's licking his face. And he just looks at this little adorable little red-haired Pomeranian at him. And then its mouth opens up like the Reaper's. It does connect it to Blade too. And you get that whole open face, mouth, jaw thing. And he just, he recoils in horror. And he looks at me, he's like, you made a goddamn vampire Pomeranian? Like, he is as incredulous as we are with every word coming out of his mouth. And then Triple H scoops him up as he has been loving on this dog the entire movie and just, like, makes a kissy face at him. And the dog, like, opens its alien Reaper mouth jaw at him. And they're having, like, a cute moment between a man and his dog. And that, it's a perfect, I think it is a perfect indication of this movie's embrace of absurdity. I think it is. I think the way people mock this moment suggests that there was not a self-awareness in how it was put together. I think this movie is very aware of what it's doing, and I really, really appreciate that about it. And we have to acknowledge, I do have to just shout out this moment where there is interaction between Jarko Grimwood, by the way. Triple H's character, Jarko Grimwood.
The names in this film, by the way, from Jarko to Bentley Tittle, which is Eric Bogosian's character. Even Danica Talos.
You cannot have a newsman named Eric, what is it, Bentley Tittle?
Bentley Tittle.
The people in charge being like, yeah, we're having a laugh. We're having a laugh here. We know exactly what we're fucking doing. Bentley Tittle.
Bentley Tittle. That's when you know it's a comedy, and that happens within like the first 15 minutes of the film, I think.
Oh yeah, like we've had our cold open with Blade killing the familiar, which one of the great running gags throughout the Blade franchise that they do so well is how much Blade hates familiars. And how he gets to say, I hate familiars. And how familiars are always such little whiny pieces of shit. And Dr. Vance is a piece of shit. He's a familiar. The guy who traps him into murdering a person is a familiar. And it just, we see that all the way through to the end of the series, that he hates familiars and just disrespects them so much. And that there's constant comedy driving that. Oh my God, James Remar is in this movie.
Yeah.
James Remar even makes an appearance in this movie. Like, I'm sorry, all hits, no skips. I don't know how you tell me that Blade Trinity is not a fun time. At the very least, how it's not a fun time. There's that great moment in the police station where like the feds are coming to take Blade, which means the vampires, and the local cops are pissed about it. And James Remar is getting really mad, these other law enforcement officers for getting out of his jurisdiction. And it's like he forgets the line or something, because he's just yelling at them about what dicks they are, and he just goes, "Don't interfere with my thing!" He just says, "my thing." With my thing! It's like, did you forget the line, James? Like, was this improvising at this point? Like, but this all builds up to the reason I brought it back to the Pomeranian, and this scene, I just have to, getting to the queer horror of it too, and just the gorgeousness of Parker Posey's entire performance in this. This movie is like, in the way that you watch Josie and the Pussycats now, and you realize the comedy genius of Parker Posey in that movie, it's the same thing in Blade Trinity. When, after they get totally screwed over by the Night Stalkers at the police station, they can't take Blade, they're back at their vampire HQ, and she's sitting draped on top of a table, like she would a lounge piano. And she is like the knight's chanteuse. Like, she's sitting on top of this table with her legs slung to the side, and she just screams, "Fucking Hannibal King!" And she, like, breaks an intercom by punching down onto it. And Triple H, Jargo, is pulling an arrow out of his eyeball. And in an expression of just, like, how pissed she is, she just screams, "Fucking Hannibal King!" And she just, for no reason, reaches over and punches a woman out of her chair. Just punches a woman in the face, knocks her out of her chair. And her brother, Asher, leans in and just goes, "Oh, what's wrong? You need a timeout, half pint?" Fuck you, Asher. It is such a perfect throwaway moment of like, did we just enter the family Discord portion of Blade 3? What the fuck is going on here? She just knocks somebody's ass out. And then once Jarko gets the arrow out of his eye, they make it a point. They have someone enter the frame to bring Jarko his dog. Like, Jarko's back. We better get him the puppy. Like, Jarko has to have his dog when he's home. Somebody comes in, they hand Jarko the dog, and they're like, giving human puppy kisses to each other. It's like the intentional nature of the relationship between Jarko and the vampire Pomeranian in this movie is something that goes beyond one scene and is indeed a tracking element when we are in Vampire HQ. And there's also just the fact of when we finally meet Drake, it's because Danica is walking through Vampire HQ. She's descending a stair. There is an incredible slow motion walk of Parker Posey panning from her feet up to her face, making the most just blasé, apathetic, I don't know what that face is that she is making as she is sashaying down these stairs in that tight-fitting, silk dress. Absolutely incredible work. Incredible work.
I think that is what you're referring to as the patented Parker Posey face, where she looks both incredibly annoyed to have been forced to be there,
yes,
and also at the same time a lot more fabulous and aware that she is the most luscious person in the room.
And
it's like, I am annoyed that you have to be admiring my presence amongst you. It is annoying to me to share myself with you, even if it's just because we're in the same room together.
But as long as I am here, I'm going to leave it all on the field. Because I am Parker Posey, and I don't deliver anything less. The number of insertions of just kind of moments like that are so effective that I'm like, no, this movie had it. This movie knew exactly what it was doing.
Oh yeah, especially, and I think the moment where it just really hammers it down, it's not even the Vampire Pomeranian scene, it's the scene where Danica just tells everyone to stop making dick jokes because she is getting jealous.
Yeah, it's triggering.
Which makes no sense.
It's triggering my envy. Can everyone just stop talking about dicks? It's triggering my envy. What? And that happens in the scene. Where they're physically interrogating Hannibal King, and they're threatening him, give us the information about the Night Stalkers, this, that, the other, and they're torturing him. There's that amazing moment in that beatdown scene where she just gets caught up and just she slaps him across the face and kicks him in the nuts. The physical comedy of what she is doing in that scene, at points with a cigarette hanging out of her mouth, is so fabulous. The way I have replayed so many times just that moment where she is suddenly she's just staring at him like she doesn't give a shit. Then she's overwhelmed with the need to slap him across the face. The way her face changes when she hauls off and just whacks Hannibal right in the face. And then when she just like folds her body into him and kicks him, it is so funny. It is a spectacular moment of physical acting up against like the perfect, you have the apathetic fabulosity of Parker Posey up against the like deadpan dry humor of Ryan Reynolds. That scene works so well. Again, I don't know how people aren't having a fucking great time. I don't know where at a certain point people decided they weren't having fun, but like, and this it's all entertainment. And the fact that like just the great dated moment I just have to shout out of when they're about ready to go like start rounding up familiars, and there's that like it becomes a montage and they're in the car getting ready to go, and we're at a point in technology such that Jessica Biel is making a playlist for her iPod, and we have to say like she likes making playlists when she hunts. Like we're like deploying the word playlist, and she's like on her iTunes manually selecting tracks to upload to her iPod, and then he cites trip hop. It's like, oh my god, we are in so many layers deep of 2004 right now, and that she's going to do this whole scene in the lowest cut boot cut jeans imaginable, like, and Blade, even when he sees them, he's like, what the fuck is this? How are you dressed? What is this supposed to be, tactical? And it's like, it's hilarious because that is what we thought tactical, like that is what movies told us tactical was in that era, was that like sexy kind of cargo, but very fitted and functional things that also probably weren't so functional as they were just fashionable. Like the entire show, Terminator the Sarah Connor Chronicles, is built around tactical chic. I love that show, and everybody in it is so hot because they are wearing Blade Trinity-esque tactical chic apparel. Incredible. I love it. I love it. And who could possibly look better in tactical chic than Ryan Reynolds and Jessica Biel?
I mean, honestly, I have a question written in my outline. It was like, do you think this film deserves for valuation? But I'm not going to ask that because you've just answered that for about an hour. But Jordan, conscious of your time, and to round up our 2-hour-long conversation about the Blade films.
I mean, at least we got 3 movies in 2 hours this time instead of 2 movies in 2 hours like we did last time.
To be honest, I think it's not enough time for all the Blade movies. But I was going to ask you, kind of, Blade was massively important for many reasons. Mm-hmm. Not least of them is because it was Marvel's, I believe, first massive box office mainstream success.
I think it was, yeah.
And it really, I don't think it gets enough credit as the film that ushered in basically the next 20 years of big budget mainstream entertainment, which is comic book movies. So what do you think the legacy overall of the Blade franchise is?
It's such a fascinating question because the Marvel machine has gotten so big that its legacy is so huge, and what Iron Man means to that franchise is so much that he is sort of, I think, by the casual viewer considered like the original cell of the Marvel machine. And while he is of the MCU, this is the beginning. This was pre-X-Men. This was, like you said, the next, it helped to catalyze the next 25 years of entertainment. And the phase 4 is just starting. It's been delayed by the pandemic, but like all those movies, all those projects, including the new Blade that were announced at 2019 Comic-Con, that is yet to arrive in front of us. And it begins with Blade. It begins with Wesley Snipes. It begins with one of the biggest, most versatile actors of the 2000s, a black man who was adept across any genre that you could put him in. And he is, while he has had financial troubles and his filmography is more populated with more like SVOD stuff now. And, fortunately you have something like Dolomite Is My Name, where you bring him back into a prestige acting role and he like will steal any scene from the people around him. The fact that Marvel has advanced how it is without Wesley Snipes advancing with it is like fucking annoying. It's really frustrating. Like I in the way that we did on the Screen Drafts pod of Wesley Snipes, I want so much for there to be like a great cultural I want for there to be like a Snipes-assance in the way that there was like a McConaissance. So like for him to get like a handful of really amazing meaty roles or small roles in really amazing films that do that thing where they spur everybody to go back and revisit the filmography to understand, like, holy shit, this person's been here this entire time. I'm so pumped that they're getting a new act in their career where we can celebrate what they've done and they can have a high level of success, you know, recapturing the sort of magic of earlier days, because the legacy of Blade is the legacy of Wesley Snipes. These movies are what they are because of what he brought to the role, and I can love Blade Trinity because of him being Blade, because of his consistent amazing presence in this franchise throughout. And I can even how Blade 2 doesn't work with me, how I can enjoy it as a GDT movie, the fact that it does disappoint me as a Blade movie speaks to the necessity of Wesley Snipes for me in all of this, because it wasn't giving me enough Blade versus Wesley Snipes, and that's why it doesn't sit quite right with me, because he's the core of it. He's the most important thing, and if you deviate from him, well, that's an issue. I fully believe in Mahershala Ali to resurrect this character and carry it on with all the swagger and charisma and fucking stillness. God, if there is an actor that can capture the stillness, as you have pointed out, of that Blade, it is Mahershala Ali. And just that, like, viciousness on a whim. But the fact, too, it is so exciting for me as a big genre fan, a fan of violent cinema, rated R, horror stuff, the fact that the original cell of Marvel domination is an R-rated, bloody ass, like, sexy action horror film, is like, hey bitches, don't forget how this all started. And maybe you might want to invest a little bit more money in cool shit like that too. Like, I know you're owned by Disney now, but like, remember when this huge hit came out of the darkness and it was cool and it was fucking slick and there was a blood rave and you have Tracy Lords in a bra with Mercury in a white frosted everything tiny outfit, like dance fucking in the middle of a blood rave. You remember when that was a hit and when that gave you one of the great opening scenes in cinema history? Let's have more of that. Gay this shit up, make it horror, give me more blood, give me profanity, and yes, put your Disney money behind it, because the audience, the Blade audience, is waiting for more. Do not sanitize my next Blade. Do not nice wash my Mahershala Ali Blade, because I will be so pissed at you if you do. I'll be so pissed. I don't need grimdark Justice League bullshit. Like that like, let's paint it super saturated in colors and call it meaningful. No, this actually hits hard. Give me more hard-hitting shit. Yes. And not because men are crying, but because they're badass vampire hunters. And they just need to get out there and level righteous justice at the undead, man.
I mean, the pen has dropped. Everything's dropped.
Everything is dropped.
I'm just like sitting here. It's like, I know I can't make noise because this is audio, but fuck it. Like, I just wanted to clap while you were talking.
I feel very passionately about this.
I love it. The passion comes through.
Good.
Jordan, thank you. I mean, again, so much for
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so glad to be back. I'm so glad to be back.
It's honestly just a privilege to hear you talk about something that you feel so passionately about.
I have a gear that I can get into that is pretty assertive. That's pretty infectious. And it was just, I love Blade, and I have to shout out Action Twitter, which is like the best corner of film people on the internet. It's such a, like, it's just people recommending really cool shit to watch all the time. I don't really encounter much pretension there. I don't encounter like dick measuring. There's no like, you should watch this, you should watch this. If you haven't watched, Are You For Real? I think because it's such a kind of disregarded segment of cinema. Like, horror is definitely kind of like the trash kid of the movie family, but there's still so much academic study devoted to horror. There are English departments that are devoted to horror. There's the Miskatonic Horror Institute. There's a lot of rigorous study devoted to horror, and I think Action is sort of can considered the puff pastry of it all. When these films are substantial, they are works of art, they are magnificent. The host of the Adkins Undisputed podcast, he described in the episode that I did with him, he said that it's no different than, it's a musical. Like, action movies are musicals, but it's just fight scenes instead of songs. And I was like, oh my god, that's fucking true. Like, these are balletic pieces that are put together for us. And I just so much want for people to celebrate these kinds of movies for all of the work that it takes to make them. They aren't just puff pieces. They are incredible works of art. And, you know, when you can have an action horror movie that's marrying together like my two favorite kinds of movie you can possibly have, and then you put in Wesley Snipes, who is probably one of my favorite actors ever. Like, this is just me. You give me Jessica Biel's arms and Ryan Reynolds' abs. Oh my God, tailor-made, drag queen Parker Posey as Danica Talos, like, incredible. And one last shout out to Blade Trinity in the way that, like, how we were talking about how, like, it always kind of expands the world just a little bit more. The blood bank scene is so good in this movie. Because, like, what we see in the first one is that they realize that familiars they have blood banks operating in the city where they're running blood bags to vampires for feeding, but they've scaled up the operation and I thought that was a really cool choice. Like, that was the exact kind of escalation that felt really amazing. In, like, how do we go further after, like, the incredible labyrinthine politics of the last one and what that could have given us with another sequel, to escalate, like, oh God, things have gotten so bad in the invisible war between human and vampire, that they've realized they can scale up. They kidnap the undesirables. They snatch the otherized, the marginalized off the streets, homeless people, junkies, people that society won't miss when they're gone. Nobody will miss them. Nobody will notice. And they are, you know, in their mind, in the minds of familiars, quote unquote, cleaning up the streets by taking these untouchables and turning them and putting them in blood farms, strapping them into sacks, and then just bleeding out all of their blood slowly and continually, like, allowing them enough time to reproduce it, keeping them alive and on life support, but just turning human beings into blood factories and considering whole segments of the population so worthless as to go missing and not be missed. That was an awesome scene. And the way Blade, like, shoves that guy's head up against the bag. He's like, is this really what you want to do? Is this who you are? You think there's a place for you at the table with these people? It's so vicious looking. And it's practical, like, so much of it had to be practical, and I'm sure was, like, paintbrushed in with, like, digital replication. But, like, the structure of walking into that warehouse and seeing the blood farm, that was another one of those awesome Blade franchise moments where the world gets a little bit bigger and a little bit scarier and a little bit more intense. That was really awesome.
I love it. I just love listening to. I mean, you know, you can consider me a new convert to Blade Trinity.
Woo! We're doing it one at a time. One at a time.
Yeah. That's how good work is done.
I love a reclamation. Obviously, I will never stop pounding the drum for Jennifer's body, and I'm happy to do the work for Blade Trinity.
I love it. I look forward to the Super Yaki collaboration so I can continue to be financially ruined by you and your great reclamation process, Jordan.
Oh, Super Yaki, you're bankrupting us all. All of us.
So, Jordan, thank you enormously for your time,
you.
Both for the off the record chat and for the recording. But where can people find more of your work online?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Jorcru, Jorcru, and you can find me on Patreon, patreon.com/Crucchiola, and I also have my Disaster Girls podcast where I talk about disaster movies with my co-host Amanda and producer Jason. And then I make my Autisterion podcast where me and my co-host, the filmmaker Sam Weinman, are giving the Criterion level deep dive treatment to the horror movies of the millennium era, around the late 90s through the 2000s, that even if you loved, you may have unfairly disregarded as insubstantial. And we are here to tell you, folks, there's a lot going on that you weren't realizing 10, 15 years ago. So if you like talking about the insane, insatiable, toxic media climate of the 2000s, like we are doing a lot on the internet now, and horror movies, we are up to that. So please do join us. I mean, you know, I'm not a believer, but you're doing the Lord's work for the new millennium. Yeah, in the Lord that we consider viable. Yes, I completely agree. Jordan, thank you so much again. Thank you, Anna. I'm happy to come back anytime. I love talking to you. Okay, And that's it for this episode of the Final Girls podcast. You can find us and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your shows. If you can, please do take 30 seconds of your day. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. It means a lot. It really helps out.
You can find out more about what we do on our website, thefinalgirls.co.uk. Subscribe to our weekly newsletter over there and follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at The Final Girls UK. You can also head over to our Patreon to support us if you can and you want to over at patreon.com/The Final Girls. And we're posting bonus episodes and more stuff over there. You can also follow Jordan at JorCrew, and I am on Twitter as well at Anna B. Demented. Thank you for listening, and next week we will be going back in time to the 70s with a deep dive into the Bloodthirsty trilogy.